All right, sorry about that. Okay, so we launched CalAgroClimate early this month, and let me start with saying it's a team effort. So all the people you see here, all of them had a lot of contribution to make it to this point. And I also want to recognize funding. I also want to recognize the funding that came for this CalAgroClimate development. So there were a few cooperative agreements to Climate Hub. There was funding from USD and NIFA, and also some funding came from the University of California Office of President to continue developing some of these tools for this CalAgroClimate. So I won't take a lot of time. I just wanted to show, we started with 4 prototype tools: a heat advisory, frost advisory, crop phenology, and pest advisory. So this is just the beginning, and we are planning to add more tools to this list, but it seems like some of this information was readily available. These are the areas where a lot of agricultural communities have more interest in, and so that's why we created this 4 initial set of tools. In terms of data set, so most of the products that you see uses PRISM 4-kilometer resolution data. In our CalAgroClimate system, we purchased a high resolution 800-meter resolution PRISM data set, and for crop phenology and pest tool, we are using that high resolution data. And for heat and frost advisory, it's a 7-day forecast. So it's basically a National Weather Service forecast, but then we are trying to categorize and put them in an advisory system based on the threshold that user selects, and I'll go into that. So here's the difference between 4 kilometers and 800-meter resolution. So you get, from their website, it seems like you get 25 times more information in 800-meter resolution. So given the topography and microclimates we have in California, we thought it might be more valuable to go with the higher resolution. So that's why our initial challenge was getting this high resolution data and then still running these tools within the shortest time frame for user to get the information out. And so it took some time, but now these tools are working really very effectively. I'm pretty impressed with the tools. So let me start with the frost advisory tool. It's a simplified, as I said, it's a National Weather Service forecast, but in this case, when you open this tool on the CalAgroClimate website, first user can select this temperature threshold. So 26 degrees up to 25 Fahrenheit, and so whichever frost tolerance they want to select based on the crop, and based on that information, you get the frost risk map in this format. User can select a particular location by just clicking on the map, or you can select a particular address. But this is a Google map that the system uses. And based on that, it creates a frost risk in terms of how many consecutive days temperature is going to be below that average. Because if crops are exposed to a single day where frost or the temperature going below that threshold versus 3 days, your risk increases substantially for that crop. And then you can also download this information very easily on this tool itself. As I said, you can click on the map and it gives you this information. So if you're selecting a location where temperatures are above that threshold, you get this kind of grayish map where there is no frost exposure. But if you select a location where the temperature is within that threshold, it will say that your minimum consecutive days below that threshold is about 6 days. So all of the days are below that threshold, and you have higher risk. So for now, we have that information. What we want to improve or expand in the frost and heat advisory is we want to put those crops there and then provide crop-specific frost protection or heat mitigation strategies that farmers can utilize. And we do have some plans for how do we want to incorporate that, and some of this information would come from adaptation workbook that Steve and Lauren recently, or it's kind of in the making, almost done. So this is a same way as a frost advisory. In the heat advisory, you can select your threshold for the heat, and that could be 90 up to 110 degrees. And based on that threshold, you get this heat advisory or heat risk map for a given location. And same way, you can download this information and you can assess your risk in general. So the third tool is crop phenology, where most of the information is basically a heat unit accumulation and then connecting it with the crop growth and development phases. So if you click on the crop phenology tool, this is how it would look like. So in this case, the first thing you do is select your commodity. And so, we have this many crops, and this is just the beginning. We have many other crops, and we are just trying to prioritize based on the information we have and based on the value of these crops. And so, for example, if you click wine grapes, the next thing you do is select a variety. And so we really wanted to provide crop and variety specific information as much as we can. If we don't have that kind of resolution, then we also have an option for just looking at the generic information, and that way you can at least assess type of information you are trying to get. And so next step is you select when you want to start your GDD calculation accumulations. We do have this default values where if farmers don't want to click or provide any particular inputs, but then go with the default values, we have all this information preloaded, so they don't have to change much of the information other than just providing their location. The other thing, the important thing is that sometimes farmers want to see or compare how their current year is compared to the last year or last 5 years in that sense. And so we do provide this option for them to compare current year with respect to 5, 10, 15, 20, up to 40 years. And so that kind of gives you the range of uncertainty and they get compared in this format. And then when you launch when you say that, select your location, it will launch this map, and you can, either click anywhere in your particular location or just choose it from this text box up there. And this is what the crop phenology tool would provide. And so in this case, we selected wine grapes, Cabernet Sauvignon, start date, then average number of years you want to compare it with, and it provides critical growth stages estimation for that particular location. So there is also an option on top of this, this is a 5 years average, but if you want to select a particular year, there is an option to select that particular year from the drop-down menu, which it's not showing it here, but there is an option on the tool. So, if you want to compare 2022 versus 2021, you still have that option as well. Okay, so this is what we have in the phenology tool, and I think we are adding more resolutions to existing crops. but at the same time, we are also adding more crops. In terms of the pest advisory, we have crop-specific pest information. And so, first thing you do is select your crop and then select your particular pest of interest. And all this other things would pop up by default. So here you can see the first generation, second generation, third generation. All this information are preloaded, but if you want to have input your own data, you have that option or flexibility to do that. And so once you provide all this information, it gives you the expectations or the estimation of number of generations, when those generations would start or end. And a lot of this information grower can use to apply pesticide applications or field scouting and things like that. And so we think this information are valuable. You also see at the end of the map there is a red bar which shows your fall frost exposure. So a lot of times when you have crop or pest phenology going up to the harvest time frame, you also want to see whether there is a harvest time frost risk or not. And so that's also an added information there. All right, so in terms, these are all the tools we have so far, and we have planned to add many other tools and resources as they become available. So our next approach is doing significant outreach and dissemination of whatever the tools that we have, and try to provide information on how the users or growers and agricultural technical service providers or ag stakeholders in general can use this information for decision making. We started with news media, and so it's gaining a lot of attention. I did an interview this morning with ABC 30 News, and yesterday with Eyewitness News in Bakersfield. And I'm going to be doing a radio show on Friday. I wasn't expecting this much attention, but it seems like there is a lot of interest. So if I get more invitation, I'll channel it to Steve or Lauren. And there were some.
You were made for this, Tapan. This is you're perfect. Right.
So I think early in spring and in summer, what we want to do more about organizing this extension workshop and give information to farmers in conferences about this CalAgroClimate. And if there are any other ways we can increase the footprint of this information, I'm all ears and appreciate your support on this. So as I said, next step, we want to keep improving the tools that we have based on feedback we'll receive from growers or ag community in general. We are also planning to add more location-specific agroclimatic indicators. So that would come from Lauren's paper. So she already published this work with many of us, our co-authors, Ning and Steve and me. So we can use that information and create a set of tools that would provide really crop-specific information. We also want to convert adaptation workbook resources into understandable and readily available resources for farmers and ranchers. And more importantly, we want to extend this collaboration, and we want to seek funding, and we want to continue this effort because this is just the beginning. We have many resources we can add to this. With that, stop. Thanks. Any questions?